Good evening. Sorry to interrupt the wonderful comedy that was going on. So we'll try to be funny. Pradeepto, Paul, Andy, Vasanth, and Anand, please welcome. I'm glad to have you here on the panel today. I have really prepared some, after 2 weeks of hard work, prepared some questionnaire, right? So I'm sorry about this, but I'm confident you will be able to answer these. So start with Anand, right? So with the proliferation of internet-connected devices, the probability of vulnerability attacks increases, right? So does IoT require a new set of guidelines and the rules to overcome this?
Audible? Yeah, so good question. So what we've been seeing is that if you offer an hardware in isolation, it definitely get into these whole virus and attacks in that case. So to address that, the latest acquisitions which Intel has done, which is a Wind River, it provides the hardware capability and the software capability to pre-integrate all kind of components which protect the device and the infrastructure from such vulnerabilities. So going forward, when we see larger and large devices and different form factors getting connected, you need those capabilities at the hardware level to be built in. And Intel, in partnership with these organizations, does provide one of those.
Thank you, Anand.
Yeah.
So the next question is to a friend from SAP, Vasanth. How important of a role do standards and open source play in IoT? As we are in the early stages of IoT, you see multiple proprietary platforms rising. So how do you see this playing out for you?
Yeah. So the importance of open platform is something which is very very critical for IoT adoption. Either you come from the device side, or you are taking the data from the device and moving it into the platform, the internet platforms which are available, and also make this relevant for consumption at various levels, whether it is mobile or any other form factors. What is important is how open is that core platform for collection of information, right? And also how open is your platform to build applications on that. So this is of primary importance, and anybody who does not bring this openness to that platform layers, will find it difficult to get adoption. So from an SAP perspective, there has been a conscious decision that anything for IoT, which is being currently the primary focus, we have built the platform in such a way that you can consume information from both SAP systems as well as non-SAP systems. You can also integrate with multiple non-SAP big data platforms like Hadoop and others. We have also ensured that data scientists are able to leverage the multiple code language on which they write these algorithms, whether it is C, C++, or Fortran or any other languages, right, that we are able to support them as well. So for us, primary importance is that the open platform is a need for IoT to thrive.
Right. So just one more question on that note, right? You have been in this industry, multiple verticals for more than 40 years now. So which is, you understand the vertical nuances, right? So can you come up with some example, some vertical on how our IoT things you are trying to evolve with the solutions?
Sure. I can give you 2 examples to start with, and as the panel progresses, I can share more. Basically, if we look at manufacturing, we talk about connected manufacturing, and in that, there's one very good example which you can also look up at sap.com, where we talk about Harley Davidson, where a customizable bike, if you go in the morning, you should be in a position to get the bike out in the next 4 hours time. Right? So that was the vision of Harley Davidson, and they have completely built new factories in 2011 and worked with multiple partners, and SAP was one of them to help them move through this journey where IoT was a key play on the manufacturing side. Right? Both in terms of mission tracking, the parts inventory, and in terms of the people availability to produce those components and so on and so forth, has been brought together, and we have moved the cycle time of 21 days to 6 hours.
Wow.
Right? So that is one example on the connected manufacturing. And the second one is probably I can take an example which cannot be classified under an industry vertical, but I would say more from a social cause. Is an example right here in India, where we worked with UP state government, right, to look at flood management. Flooding in this country is, as you know, we've just come out of the Assam flood where the 67 people who have died, Uttar Pradesh flood in 2013, 2014, and so on and so forth. So there has been a constant amount of flooding, and today it is a responsibility of the state government to take care of flood management. And today, when we looked at this, the systems on which they are looking at it, it is mostly telephones and probably a little bit of consumption of information through some logbooks which they have, and they need to manage the river basin like Ganga, which is running in few hundreds of kilometers. And we came out with other partners in the ecosystem to actually solve this problem of flood, at least in the initial stages of monitoring floods. Right? Today, people do not know from an upstream to downstream for a particular 100-kilometer duration, right, or a length, when the flood, when the breach happens upstream and when the breach happens downstream, can we actually evacuate people and save lives, right? So to that extent, IoT came into the picture, and we worked with the device, we worked with partners who have the understanding of these domains, and helped using our SAP platform to actually construct a flood management solution, right, which is helping save lives, and today that is being implemented by the UP Irrigation Department and many other states which are in the pipeline, basically.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. I think those are really in need of the hour, right? So a lot of, if you look at Fujitsu has deployed these kind of solutions in few of the countries. I think India badly needed that, and a wonderful job. So well done. So to Pradeepto, right? So you have seen the adaptation of cloud, right? So IoT is a new thing that we have been talking since past 2 years maybe. About 7-8 years ago, we started talking about cloud, right? So cloud is not a buzzword anymore. It has been the de facto CIO must have for his business. Now that IoT is coming in, and you are a big player in cloud, so how do you see both getting integrated, and what are you doing with the partners in that area?
Right. Clearly, you're not doing an Arnab Goswami on this panel. We're all getting a chance to speak, right? Very important point, actually. Internet of Things today, as largely we find our customers talking to us, it's still viewed as a future state, or viewed as something being slightly complicated. VMware actually views it in a little different way. We are actually focusing on the essential building blocks of this entire IoT ecosystem. And when you talk about cloud solutions, definitely that is one of the key components of the infrastructure building block in an IoT ecosystem. I mean, any IoT application will need mobile communication, will need connectivity devices, will need management layers, and most importantly, it will need a secure, reliable infrastructure on which it's deployed. VMware actually started this journey of software-defined automation. Think of, for instance, Tesla. I don't know how many of you have heard of this software-defined car manufacturer. Tesla actually releases their product innovations or updates via release notes on their website. Whoever thought that would be possible? All of us thought that was our domain, the technology domain. Imagine an auto manufacturer releasing product innovations through their website via software updates. It's very common, right? Every month we see in the newspapers, car manufacturers are actually calling back vehicles to provide product updates or enhancements or stuff like that. Tesla also went through the same. They had a ground clearance issue in a certain batch of vehicles that were out of their plant. Well, guess what? They didn't have to recall anything. They used the IoT ecosystem. They just released a software patch, which the consumer sitting at home downloaded on his smart, I call it thing, the Internet of Thing, his smart thing, and he just ran that patch on his vehicle, and boom, the ground clearance is up. So imagine the impact, the far-reaching impact that this can have on society. When you look at VMware's journey in software-defined automation, today we are looking at software-defined data centers. We started this journey more than a decade back with our, excuse me, compute virtualization story. We have taken that to network virtualization and storage virtualization, security virtualization. All of this virtual infrastructure coupled with a management layer for the operations, automation, and stuff like that, which can now, to answer your question, sit on a cloud data center, which is your private data center or a service provider led, read public cloud, or an acute mix of the two, hybrid cloud, right? So this entire software defined data center is one of our key contributions to the essential building block of the IoT ecosystem.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pradeepto. So now going to Intel, right? So you have been rocking in your business so far, but you missed one bus called mobile, right? You didn't make a chip for the mobile devices. And there were a lot of the specialized chip makers who actually took that bus and you were left behind. Now, with Internet of Things coming into your forte, so what kind of role do you think Intel is playing in Internet of Things?
Yeah, so the answer to your first question, it's a set of priorities, I think, that every organization defined. And for us, the priority was to stay with PC and data center at that point of time. And we continue to harness that priority for us. And today, when we look at either our market potential or the growth, I believe it gives both win-win situation for every other players to come and play. Now, coming back to the second piece is, IoT for us is not a new definition, right? For us, it's been a journey which has been about good at least 4 to 5 years, which has been come and play. Our first level of integration happens with the device manufacturers when they look at either the chipset or a capability of a chipset to integrate or talk to multiple devices. So we started a long platform about 3 years back, and now the latest platform which is coming up, which is called Atlantic Ridge, which will enable those devices in multiple form factors. The form factors could be a wearable, could be a form factors, could be a detachable, form factor could be automotive-led things, or form factor could be in many of the forms altogether. It's a capability of innovation when we're looking at from 22 nanometers to going to 14 nanometers, and in subsequent years looking at a further nanometers to going down. It's a further hard compute which will go into that chipset and enable those devices to translate is what our engineering efforts has been. And to a large extent, the Atlantic Ridge and it does address those potential opportunity for us. That's one. Secondly, I think the second piece which we are proactively working is not limiting our efforts only at the chipset standpoint, but also working with the larger ecosystem partners per se. Of course, SAPs and VMWare are one of the respected and trusted partners, and Fujitsu, of course, is one of the trusted partners. But what we had started to do is that we started to go into the verticalization of our products and engineering into that case. Very recently, we deployed a very large POC concept in Bangalore with one of the leading manufacturers as well as one of the leading home automation company. After about 6 months of those POCs which came in, the first results which we received altogether, having deployed those Intel-enabled chipsets, Intel-enabled technologies, with leading partners altogether, the complete township on an average saved about $1 million in purely from the electricity and other automation which they would have spent otherwise if they didn't have those kind of automation in that place. So I think the innovation for us has evolved purely from hardware, which of course in the coming platform which is there, and also evolved from us in integrating with the vertical applications and industry solutions to make it more consumer as well as enterprise ready when they start evaluating multiple IoT platforms.
Thank you. So coming to Andy, you have made wonderful presentation on internet connect and IoT solutions that Fujitsu has developed over a period of time and deployed, and which we also tend to bring to India in some time. So for a country like India, which IoT solution you think could be the priority?
So I think the emergence of two things is going to be important. One of the things that Pradeep was mentioning was about the great technology that VMware is bringing to play. I think building blocks like that are going to be essential in the way that we shape the future. So I see two things as being important for the emergence of, let's say, the next generation of business in India. First one is what I would call the business digitalization platform. I hinted somewhat at this morning. And really what that is a set of processes, tools, techniques, and methodologies for bringing the assets of an existing company into an Internet of Things type environment, or into an environment where they can exploit big data and they can exploit the application landscape that they have today. The second thing is what I would call the emergence of hybrid IT. I think most of the people in the room would be aware that we've had various phases of cloud technology being rolled out. But any company viewing that as an opportunity at the moment is going through a huge process in terms of transition and transformation of their existing landscape. But along with partners like VM and Intel, we're starting to see the emergence of intelligent software, intelligent building blocks that we can combine in a way that would allow us to blend what would be typically known as public cloud or private cloud into a complete hybrid environment in a much more simplified way, such that we can see the transition and transformation of people's existing application landscape in a way that is, let's say, today, a massive undertaking and a massive business risk. So I think those two facets for me are what's going to be most important. So both the business digitalization platform and the emergence of hybrid IT infrastructure that basically allows them to scale at unprecedented levels.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Paul, just to extension of this question, right? You have seen this happening in the global market. So which is the particular vertical or industry do you think is up for the priority IoT solution?
I have a particular bias towards the automotive sector being the sector I look after, but I think all the sectors have their individual challenges in terms of being ready for the Internet of Things and some of the challenges that will come. And I think if you look at it globally, I think the markets are going to be segmented by the regions. And so what I mean by that is there are companies that are traditionally headquartered, perhaps in the West, that aren't culturally ready for the pace of change that's required. And there are other parts of the world that will embrace the change that's required a lot quicker. And I think the cultural thing that sits in what Andy was talking about, which is a digital transformation, and the digital transformation needs fresh thinking, the ability to move at pace and to try things. And so I think that's not necessarily a sector thing, that's more of a cultural thing. And I think globally, different parts of the world will respond better. I think particularly places like India have proven that they are adept at moving at pace, and we saw that in the smart city presentation earlier on today. And I think that will put challenge on some of the traditional players in some of the sectors that maybe will struggle to embrace the change as much as they need to.
Sorry. Some of the customers I met today asked me this question, right? So what is the right time? Is there something called right time to adapt to IoT?
I think the answer to that question is there's never a wrong time. You've got to embrace it as soon as you can, because there's some good examples. If we look at the smartphone revolution that happened in the world, the traditional players in the smartphone, in the cellular mobile phone market, felt that they had the market sewn up, and then Apple arrived along with RIM, with a couple of smartphones that for a short period of time, for RIM, but longer term Apple dominated proceedings. And nobody would have predicted that maybe 1 or 2 years before that happened. And so I think the answer to the question is you have to move as soon as you can. And I think it also fits with what a lot of people are calling bimodal thinking. So there's a need to actually run your business and your IT side of your business in a traditional and safe and predictable way. But there's also a need to have an accelerated path. But that accelerated path can't just be anarchy. It has to be in a controlled way, but it does need to short circuit some of the constraints. And I think this comes back again to the cultural part. I think some cultures will adopt that bimodal thinking a lot better than others. And the ones that will struggle will be the ones that are kind of stuck in the mode of, well, we've always done it this way, therefore it's tried and tested, let's stick with that. I think they will be the ones that struggle. So to answer your question, I think the sooner people can adopt what's happening, the pace of change that's happening, and the opportunities the Internet of Things offers, and plan in a digital transformation around that they're going to be the winners.
Thank you, Paul. I only have 20 more questions to go, so is that okay? Last question, just the last question. Again, back to Paul. Paul did wonderful presentation, so a lot of questions are going back to Paul again, right? So this digital transformation, Internet of Things that we're talking about. So what would be the impact of that on IT requirements? And what do you suggest? How do you go? How do you take care of that as a CIO of an organization or the CFO of the organization? What is your advice to them?
It's a big topic, so I'm going to cut that down to a couple of recommendations rather than the full answer, because we would all get fed up when we wouldn't get the comedian back on. I think the thing to understand here is this is a digital transformation and a journey that, I touched on before, you need to get on pretty quickly. I think the impact of that will be the Internet of Things will generate lots of data. We're going to have a sensor on all these different devices, all these things we've talked about. I can give you one example of one global automotive manufacturer who's looking at a capacity growth of between 40 and 80% in the next 5 to 10 years. So they're already planning for a whole new data center strategy based on that. Now, the other part of that is that 40 to 80% growth is assuming that less than 10% of the data that will be available to them will be of any use. So built into that strategy is the strategy to junk at least 90% of the data that comes in that direction. So if you think about that, that's in itself a huge challenge and something that an organization needs to consider. And the other part is, I think, goes back to that bimodal thinking. The need to move at pace and make those sort of decisions quickly and start to plan the future in a meaningful way is going to save a lot of heartache and a lot of wasted energy and spend, but also is going to make sure that organizations win by staying ahead. So I think my best answer in terms of the considerations around this is digital transformation will happen. The Internet of Things is an opportunity not to be missed, but also a necessity to embrace. But how you do that could determine the future of your organization. It's that fundamental. And if you look at an organization, say an automotive, with the connected vehicle being at the center of the Internet of Things, for them it's even more fundamental to their business because their product is a component of the Internet of Things. So I think this is a revolution that's happening, and those organizations that haven't woken up to it or embraced it, they ought to by now.
Okay, thank you. I think with SAP, right, I have been having this continuous discussion. Is there an IoT application that can speed up the way we can get the purchase order from our customers? So we are working on it. We will we will sell that IoT application as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time and participating and listening to this panel discussion. So without taking much time, I would like to thank the panel once again to be here. Really appreciate it.
Mr.
You
Anand,
answered all the questions.
my apologies for the interruption,
Yes.
but you suggest we would want to take some questions from the audience?
Yeah,
What's your
sure.
suggestion, sir? We're good?
So, yeah, have any questions?
Yes, sir. We have a question from the gentleman right here in the first row. I'm going to hand over the mic to him.
How do you view IoT and education services available to all at the all India level? You know, we know municipal schools in India they hardly function. So how do you look at this type of a vertical and the IoT taking over it?
This question is.
I'll take that.
You will take that? Okay.
Along with the Skill India program which is going on and voluntary certification and everything.
Okay, so I'm going to split your question in two parts, right? So I'll tell you what's happening in India as we speak. So interestingly, one of the leading OEM partners, what it has done, look at currently the so-called smart classroom concept, right? What you have in a smart classroom is a smart board, okay, which is connected through the multiple wires and the projector and the PC which is there, which is sourcing a data from a so-called science lab in the school. That's pretty much is what the smart classroom is happening. The cost of enabling one classroom is approximately about 5 lakh rupees, give and take about $8,000, right? What this gentleman has done, one of the leading OEM partners, was he's taken a projector and he built it a PCOS, a PC on the stick, inside the projector, okay? Now that projector, that the PCOS is enabled to source a Wi-Fi, to using Wi-Fi data or without using any cable from a science lab, source all the content and publish into the classroom. Okay? And that PCOS solution itself, with one projector and one PCOS built into that base, is in a range of about 35,000 rupees versus a total class automation, which was about 5 lakh rupees in that case. Huge cost saving for government, private education, and a simple innovation which has led to that adoption in that case. That's what we're finding more and more such innovation in coming. Same level of innovation we're finding from a larger OEMs again to integrate those PCOS applications right in the AIOs, all in one box, the machines, and projecting back into it. Now when we're looking at the branch automation, digressing a little bit from education space, when you're looking at the banking branch automation, they're looking for devices which are pre-integrated with the Wi-Fi capability, and such devices enables them to connect back to those central servers and stuff like that. So those things within education specific or in other places, we're finding those local innovations coming in play. So hope did I answer your question?
Yeah, very well. And to take the IoT and everything, the skill set which will be required all over India. So on the vocational certification and guidance, what is happening?
So from when you say certification and all, I'm presuming you mean in terms of maintenance, serviceability, capability. What we're finding is right now, it's specific to India, is that a lot of ODM partners which trying to enter the market by themselves are facing this bit of a challenge when larger and established companies ask them specifically about warranties and serviceabilities and all those things. The skill set which is there to service each IoT level component, it's going to be a little bit of long run to develop that skill set base in India. So what these things are doing, specifically when they win a customer, they deploy their service engineers for a short to mid-term to long-term cases altogether. Hence, it leads back to it that a larger organization such like Fujitsu and larger organization, which has a capability not only to provide a last mile connectivity, but also offer a serviceability to that customer from a short to long term piece, is kind of peace of mind for CIO and CTO when they adopt those things. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. When people want to really go for a cost effective one-time deployment, they generally look for small players. But when people want to look at scalability, long-term deployments, and multiple forms of IoT's deployment, they typically look for more established OEM players, which has those form factors well established in case.
Correct. And one last question. How do you see the scope of telemedicine coming up in India as...
Under IoT or?
Yeah.
Few early concept projects, I'll let my colleague in SP answer this, but few early concept projects, most of the Anganwadi projects which is currently being deployed, they have been given a two clear mandate, education and healthcare. Okay. Now healthcare is not currently a centralized service, it's a very state subject service because each state subject has capabilities and application which provides on that case. In my mind, it's a completely a great opportunity which we are finding in that case. We're finding people have started to asking for a biometric tablets to a specifically face recognition tablet to a tablet which can source few thousands of data points across when they go to a home and providing home remedy applications or home remedy care in that case. So there is no let me put, there is no clear one player which addresses the large opportunity at this point of time. It's still a nascent. It's kind of fragmented all over the place right now, but it's started to pick up in a state-sponsored government healthcare projects to some extent in the case.
Okay. Which state is doing it? Which specific state?
Three currently, which is currently in our mind. Himachal Pradesh is one of the leading ones. Chhattisgarh is the second one which has started to pick up in that case. Early games, but Rajasthan also we're seeing those projects started to flourish more.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? I think we're good. Thank you. You have been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. Thanks to the panel once again.